Welcome to the Resilient Recruiter podcast. This is your host, Mark Whitby. I'm excited to be joined today by Paul Warner. Paul is the founder of Tamarack Recruiting, which he launched in 2018 as a lifestyle business that could support his other career as a professional cyclist. He leveraged AI and other technology to allow him to connect companies and candidates quickly in the few hours that he had to work between races and traveling. Then in 2020, the pandemic brought the cycling circuit to a halt, and Paul shifted his focus to scaling his agency. He's done phenomenally well, going from 90K in yearly billings when he was just running it as a side hustle to $1 million plus in annual billings in only 3 years. Now a team of 7, Tamarack Recruiting uses cutting edge processes that Paul's developed to make placements, have an impact on their clients and their candidates' careers, and achieve a really fast turnaround. I'm proud that Paul is a client of our Inner Circle Apex group. And Paul, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, Mark, thanks for having me on the show. I'm really excited.
All right, fantastic. So you have a really interesting backstory. Can you talk a little bit about how you got started in recruiting, but ran that parallel to your athletic career?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got started in recruiting back in 2015, right when I graduated from Boise State University. Leading up to me getting into recruiting, I always thought that I wanted to do medical device sales, and I wanted to be able to just be a sales rep was kind of what I thought when I was going to graduate college. And I started doing these things called informational interviews at the last, I guess it would have been the last 2 semesters of my junior year. So I did it through. I'm considering a second semester through college as well. But I went into a recruiting firm by the name of Tech Systems, and I sat down with the director of business operations there and did an informational interview, had a few lunches, and he was like, "Well, why don't you just start recruiting as soon as you're like start recruiting right now? Go through training while you're still in school, kind of doing your last semester at Boise State." And sure enough, that's actually how I got in. So my last semester at Boise State, I started recruiting, and I really haven't looked back since on starting the recruitment game.
Awesome. All right, that's cool. So you actually started before you even graduated. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. It was
And
pretty. I was really thankful.
how did you juggle that? Because you've been involved in competitive sports for a long time as well. So tell me about the sports background.
Yeah. So from sports, I've always been involved in sports ever since I can possibly remember. I used to ski race. It took me all over the world. It really thankful to have been able to do that. And I with ski racing, I was in kind of that regional national development track. So I didn't necessarily go and get the traditional high school experience. I lived in Park City, Utah, and skied all over that was kind of home base for a little bit, and then that took me kind of all over the world. So when it came to college, um, I took 2 years off outside of high school and ski raced and things like that. So it was a really good experience. And then from there, that actually led me into bike racing when I ended my ski career and started bike racing in college.
Amazing. And I believe were you professional? I know you had sponsors with your bike racing. What was your bike racing career all about?
Yeah, so with bike racing, I'm trying to feel. I'll kind of it's kind of crazy how like I've kind of gone pretty far in 2 different sports, but with bike racing, I mainly was just I just kind of I don't know. I'm trying to find the best way to put it. It was kind of a way that I mainly bike raced because I was so sad I didn't make the Olympics and go as far as I did in ski racing. So I was like, I'm gonna bike race and go absolutely as hard as I can in this to see where I can go. But actually, my professional career in bike racing actually started um, when I maybe a year after I got into a year, or actually would have been 2 years after I got into recruiting. So I mainly bike race just as a way to just get through school. Nicole and I, obviously my wife, we traveled. She was a massage therapist for for me, and she became a massage therapist. So we ended up traveling just all over the country together in our car, just kind of having fun. No real plans or agenda. And then in 20, it would have been 2017. Um, I was at a bike race in Tulsa, Oklahoma, for a race called Tulsa Tough, and we ended up I ended up getting connected to Cliff Bar, and I just ended up talking to the team director. And 2017 for me in my bike racing career was gonna ended up being like my last season, because I was like, yeah, I kind of need to like be a recruiter now. I kind of need to like grow up. And sure enough, I had like some really good noticeable kind of performances, and there was an opening on Team Cliff Bar that following year. So I remember getting a talking throughout that summer after I got connected with Team Cliff Bar, ended up getting a contract for 2018. So it was, and then I ended up kind of was like, okay, well, now I can kind of be a lifestyle recruiter and race my bike all over the U.S. and some international. So it was a really good gig.
I love Cliff Bars. I imagine you must have got sick of them having eaten you I'm hoping you got a lifetime supply of Cliff Bars and with the deal. Um,
Surprisingly, I still like, they come out with so many new flavors, and like being able to like be a Cliff athlete, like I really enjoyed, like, even genuinely, like I still enjoy the product. Like I love, there's some certain flavors that like I absolutely love. And I never,
so
surprisingly, like I never got sick of them, because I just take this, they'd send out like an athlete form, and I would just absolutely go to town on it. And so this is really funny too, because I told some of the reps at Cliff Bar when we were like doing sponsor meetings and at headquarters, I was like, hey, I'm a recruiter, and I ended up would always like take Cliff Bars to my clients and just drop them off. It's like just kind of a way to like differentiate myself, like saying, hey, look, like A, it's free for me to give you Cliff Bars, and B, let me know what Cliff Bars you want and I'll get you some Cliff Bars. And it would always be like a note. So when I told that to some people, there were some people at Cliff Bar, they were like, oh my gosh, that's like the best thing ever. We'll totally just give you all the free stuff you want if you're just gonna like go around and drop off Cliff Bars for us. And I was like, we're kind of a win-win here. So it worked out really well, even on the business front too.
hilarious. Favorite flavor of Cliff Bar?
Um, it's torn between. So I really like a lot of sugar. So I really love their strawberry blocks.
Okay,
I really do. I love their strawberry blocks, and then I also love their chocolate chip, just kind of the plain chocolate chip Cliff Bar. Just because when
chocolate
it's been
chip
in
is
your
good.
cycling jersey all day and it's super hot, it just feels like a beautifully melted chocolate chip cookie. But yeah.
Awesome. Blueberry, I like the blueberry ones, they're pretty good, but listen,
Nice.
so twen uh, you started with tech systems,
Yep.
um, but why did you set up your own business? Was that so that you could so you could spend more time cycling or
Yeah. So it was really interesting. I like to talk about like my story at Tech. I was there for a year and 8 months. And it was one of those situations where I actually loved the kind of diehard team effort that it would take to be successful in those bullpen environments. Like I really enjoyed um the camaraderie that took place there, specifically even one person that I got to train up and almost kind of be a mentor. And they fostered so many good things like in the office. I can only say amazing things about my time at Tech. What I noticed wasn't going to work long term was the amount of like toll that it took kind of on me, my relationship with my new wife at the time. And I was kind of in that moment where I was like, if I'm showing up grinding in the office starting at 7:45, leaving at 5:45, 6 every day, like I could do that if I was a single man that had nothing else going for him. But I was like, okay, yeah, my relationship with my wife isn't good. I just could see it all I could see it all playing out really quick before me, and I just kind of made the decision at that moment. I was like, hey, I really got to choose family, and I really got to choose the relationship with my wife, relationship with just other people, because I was starting to notice that to be truly successful in that environment, I found that you really had to go all in. I mean, and it was going to take more than just kind of your working life. So that was kind of my reason from leaving tech. It was always kind of hard. I've always kind of regretted. There's always been this piece of me that's regretted leaving tech, because um, the Boise tech office just does things so well, and I've always kind of looked back on those days just with the ultimate and fondest memories. But that was kind of the main reason why. So then from there, I ended up going to a really small boutique firm that and I kind of figured out that this firm that I was at was it was so small. There was absolutely no support. I was doing some sales just it was mainly like kind of healthcare EMR staffing, as that market extremely dried up. That was actually where I kind of realized, I was like, okay, I could totally not only do my own thing, but I could really be successful at this. Like that was kind of where I saw, like, I really enjoyed the account management side of the business. I really enjoyed creating solutions with clients. I really enjoyed um, even just from there, like managing the flow of requisitions, and I just enjoyed the pipelines and just everything that kind of goes involved with being a managing director. I found out really fast that I was the managing director when I was getting calls from the owner from the golf course, and I had the thought, I was like, wait, I'm doing everything. And I was enjoying it. I mean, I was enjoying doing everything, and I was living kind of a really good kind of work life balance. Um, so that was actually how I really started to succeed with Cliff Bar and cycling, because I was like, okay, sweet, I can travel, I can train, someone's paying me a base salary, so that was really that was kind of the bridge point to where I am right now, was that role.
Fantastic. All right, awesome. So tell me the story about, you know, you launched this business, but it was still kind of like a lifestyle business. And, you know, s- what changed for you that made you decide, I'm actually going to really scale something here and take this all the way and like build a company rather than just have a nice little business?
So it was kind of interesting, right? So in 2019, I I think I traveled to, like, I think it was like 25 or 30. I think it was, I can't remember the exact number, but in the course of February to September, I was gone like 30 plus weekends. And I was just all over the country racing my bike. And I was down, we were finishing out the race season in Trinidad and Tobago, in the southern Caribbean. And from there, I just kind of had this moment on the beach where I was like, you know, I just kind of had this like feeling that 2020, like the next year, I wasn't going to be racing as much. I was like, I just remember like having this moment, and I was like, well, if I'm not going to be racing, like, what am I going to do? And I just kind of had that thought, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know why. I don't know. I kind of had determined that I was gonna get a contract in a spot next year in for 2020, and then sure enough, right? Um, go to fast forward to team camp of 2020 in Napa Valley, and the pandemic hit that next weekend. And so, and
You
that
had a
was kind of
premonition.
exactly right. So it was kind of this weird experience where I was I was kind of just sitting in my apartment. I was living in this just kind of apartment because I was never my wife and I, we were never home. Um, and I was sitting in my apartment like, okay, well, what am I gonna do? Because like keep in mind, like I'm billing 90K. So like as a professional bike racer, billing 90K, traveling all over the US and like having your life paid for you and having a side business of recruiting doing that, like that was so freaking fun. Like it was such a good time. But then I'm like kind of sitting around like, well, okay, 90K in billings is only like 5 or 6 placements a year. I like don't have any clients. Like I really should probably like get to work. So I'll always remember I ended up just immediately I ended up like finding Danny Cahill, and I just like figured out like how to make NPC calls. And so I mean just like really, really, really like, just interesting ways to do it. Let's just put it that way from for what I've learned now. But so what I did was I just like would make all these NPC calls. My friend actually gave me a list that he had from is it Zoom? Yeah, Zoom Info, and that was really how I started. And so fast forward to that, I'm like actually competing. So I had a non-compete with my previous company, so I couldn't do any information technology. I couldn't do any healthcare, which were the two subsets that I knew the best. And so then I was like, well, you know what? Like I'm going to I'm going to go all into accounting and finance. Like I know absolutely nothing about accountants. I know absolutely nothing about how accounting and finance works, but I'm going to go all into it and I'm just going to put effort out there because I think one thing that I learned with recruiting was that like I feel like you're paid in effort. Like I feel like recruiting's a game where if you put a lot of effort out there, good stuff's going to happen. So I ended up taking like this candidate that I thought was really good. And turns out like when I actually like ended up placing them, they ended up being super horrible because I just knew nothing.
Oh no.
I'm being super transparent, right? Like I'm just being at the point in time, I'm like, all I knew was bike racing and how to, get a little bit done. But so I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna really like try and build a full on desk here. And so um ended up uh ended up actually like getting in with as you know, right, with NPCs, it would never be like, okay, well, we're not looking for this, we're really looking for this. And it was really good during COVID, right, because a lot of companies were looking for accounting and finance talent just to kind of navigate like the turbulent waters, whether it was people getting PPP loans or things of that nature, right? There was just a lot of um there's just a lot of need for accounting and finance, which was really cool. And then from there, I ended up getting a CFO deal. Like I ended up like getting a company that was like, hey, um, do you have any CFOs? And I was like, oh my God, because like
That's
going from like, I was like, this could be this could be life changing money, and so sure enough, and then I actually like looped in Nicole on it. I was like, okay, Nicole, you're not massaging. Like, let's figure this out. And sure enough, we ended up placing a CFO. And then ever since that point, I hired my first employee, Jesse, and that was kind of how it really started. Um, During that time of
amazing.
COVID, of not having
Hilarious.
the of not really having it. So yeah, it was a lot really really fun.
Well, what a, what comes across from you, Paul, and what I really admire and respect about you, you are super positive, and you also are incredibly hardworking and focused, and that combination seems to be, really working for you. So you just started NPC calling. You figured things out as you went along. You ended up filling a CFO slot, And then that gave you the confidence and the cash flow to say, hey, let's like, Nicole, why don't you join me in the business? And we're going to hire Jesse and we're going to start growing this thing.
Yeah.
Um, okay. Amazing. And so what happened from there?
Yeah, so we ended up hiring Jesse, and so what we did, there is a he was kind of he's the first guy, and I knew from day one that he was the guy. I always knew, so I called him. He was he was kind of in a glorified call center sales environment where he was going in and setting appointments for kind of higher level account executives for selling HCM solutions. So all that his life was making 80 to 150 calls a day, setting appointments. So I was like, okay. The way that I interviewed him, I was like, hey Jesse, like let's just figure this out. Like I'm gonna show you my MPC script. This is how it works, and just gave him like a 5 minute overview in the meeting. You know, like I just had him come over to my house. I was like, hey, this is how I do it. I'm gonna show you how to do it. The first day he interviewed, he ended up setting 7 appointments,
During the
and
interview.
during the interview
All
during
right,
the interview.
nice.
And so from there, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is crazy. I've never had 7 sales appointments, like, in a month," like, let alone let alone and this is all during the pandemic too. Like, this is
Right.
crazy. I mean, people were picking up their phones like crazy. So get Jesse on board. And he just we all that him and I did was just do MPC calls every single day. And then we got job orders. And I remember like the first time we were working 4 job orders at one point in time, and then it turned into 8 job orders, and then it turned into, we just it just started rolling because one thing that like Jesse and I did that I just am super proud of is that like not only did like if we ever had a bad call, we always picked up the phone to the next call. Like him and I, we just did it together. And like now we are where we are, and I'm not saying we're anywhere special, but it's like that's like the core of our culture is like if it's a good call, it's a good call. We set up and we move forward. But if it's a bad call and they scream at you or they're, or they even, don't follow up with you, we still focus on moving forward to the next best thing. We always just focus on like where are we going to find the positives? Where are we going to find the learning opportunities in that? So that's kind of how like with Jesse and I, in those days. So then it really started to grow actually to the point to where um, Nicole decided to come on board because there were just some changes in massage just from the stance of kind of the polarized culture here in America. So there was just a lot of people like, Nicole would have therapists and clients that would come in that would be one side really fired up about what they heard on the news on, on that day. And then the next client would come in really fired up on what they heard about the news, and it'd be kind of those polarizing things, and things were just really kind of in a lot of tension. And I
Mm.
didn't know this, but people and their like massage therapists, like they're very like they talk a lot. They're very like there's kind of this connection there. And that was kind of where Nicole was like, yeah, this really is it's kind of crazy. So she decided to come on board as a recruiter from that point. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, like I got 2 employees now. Like this is crazy. So and that was kind of where we started. And that was actually when I realized at that moment it would have been October of 2020 at that point. So um yeah, October. Yeah, it would have been October of 2020 at that point. So that was kind of when I realized it was time to start looking for a coach, start looking for some oversight, start looking for um ways to actually like improve the business, ways to get better, ways to get myself better as a recruiter. I think what I could start to see super quickly was like the issues that I had at tech systems were starting to starting to come up again, right? I just didn't know how to like balance. I would just go all into the work, and what that really started to come up. So I was like, well, hey, I need a coach. I need to figure out like how to build process. I need to figure out how to build procedure, because we kind of had a joke, right? Like it was truly a freewheeling hippie commune until and as Greg Savage puts it, right? Like, I mean, it was truly like that, just with the three of us. It was like, okay, sweet, what are we gonna do, and what are we gonna find today? I'd be like, I don't know, and we just would kind of go forward with that. Um, so yeah, it's been
So,
it yeah. Hopefully, I'm not getting
okay,
off
all right.
track, but yeah.
So, no, that's cool. So, what I'd love to know is, because there are thousands and thousands of recruiting companies, right? As we know, and your trajectory has just been, your growth has been so rapid. And I'm trying to figure out how you've done that. Now, one of the things I can observe is that you're getting tons of repeat business. Like, you're opening accounts. Number one, like, you have a successful sales engine with you and Jesse. You were successful at opening accounts, but then you were getting just volume and uh, volume of repeat business from those accounts. And then obviously you were delivering because you would just keep getting orders. How did you, what do you think is the secret, the special sauce at Tamarack?
Yeah, so I think there's two things, right? Like, I think the first is, I'll this is kind of how I see it, and I could be way off in the way that I see things, but this is kind of how I see it. I see that when you treat when you create a really, really safe and a really emotionally safe environment to work in, I see that my team treats clients unbelievably well, because
Mm.
I make sure that, that's just the first part, right? And that's the first part is like, I think where recruiting firms have seriously gone wrong is that they're not creating emotionally and mentally safe environments for their employees. So for example, right, like, I vividly remember in certain environments, I would be shaking because a counter offer came up, and I was so afraid to tell a boss or a DBO, because I knew that, like, I dropped the ball, or I knew that I did something wrong, right? Because I think in recruiting, I don't think you're ever going to find someone who's going to do a perfect deal every single time, right? There's always going to be times, especially when reps are first starting out, where they're going to make massive mistakes, just massive mistakes. So my role in that is to be like, whenever I have someone that makes just like a gut busting, blaring mistake, is to always say, hey, you know what? Like, you are not in the wrong here. Yes, a mistake was been made, but I always use we language. I never want to like go accusatory. So it's created this environment where reps feel like they have this ability to flourish, right? Because I've seen in a lot of recruitment environments, like, absolutely coming down on it when reps make mistakes. So that's the first part. And so with that, it's transitioned into then it's giving the reps the tools, the procedures, and the abilities to really, now I'm going into the second part, right? The second part is really the ability to understand the client at two different levels. It's to understand the client, not only like the true skill set. So we have like a 36 question questionnaire that we take all of our job orders through. And for me, it's all about, I want to be able to create a process for my recruiters to give them as much information as humanly possible about the role. And so the reason why I've seen that there is a lot of comeback from our clients is because when we take a job order, it's much more than just saying a quick 15-20 minute phone call and then we're off to the races, right? Like, and then you kind of
Gotcha.
just like go figure it out. So a lot of times we'll take our hiring managers into saying, like, we'll say, hey, like, we'll talk about certain candidates and we'll get the hiring manager's thoughts. So we'll go at a really, really, really deep granular level with the hiring manager. And
Mhm.
with that, we've seen the hiring managers just come back for repeat business because they literally will tell us, you understand my hiring needs and you actually understand me.
So let's just summarize what you've shared so far. Number one is you're creating a very safe environment for your recruiters where they know that if they make a mistake, they're not going to get reprimanded or fired, right? They're they're able to show up and do their best work because they feel supported, and so I get that. That makes a lot of sense. Secondly, you're getting a huge amount of buy-in from your hiring managers, from your clients. They feel like you really understand what they're looking for, what their hiring needs are. Any other ingredients here that you think have been critical to your success? Because um, what you're describing is great, and definitely, especially on as a leader, and your leadership style, I think, is awesome. But um, I still don't know if we've really gotten to the bottom of how you've gone from, like, you've basically 10 extra billings in 3 years, which
Hmm.
is just unreal. What else do you think is going on here?
I think that like from a practical level, I'm very, I also when I was working, um, I just didn't put any time. Like when I was going at 90K, right? Like I just didn't put any time towards it. You
Right,
know,
right,
I
sure.
just, I mean, there was a total time thing. So I mean, I've also kind of felt like I started recruiting at, man, I mean, I really feel like I started recruiting when I hired Jesse. You know,
Okay,
so
interesting.
you know what I mean. Like that's kind of when I really felt like I started. So I
Why
hope
do you
that
say
kind of
that? Do you mean like taking it
um
100% serious and giving it your entire focus, or
exactly. Like I felt like when I was recruiting, like when I was racing aggressively, I did it more so from a stance of, hey, if I win, I win. If I lose, I lose. It's a numbers game, you know. Um, but yeah, I mean, I also, yeah, I hope that kind of answers. I hope that kind of answers the question.
Paul,
But
tell me about your business model, because like you have things set up almost like an assembly line, which is really interesting. Could you share
mhm,
the different roles and how people work together as a team?
absolutely. So the biggest thing that we have is we have a dedicated business development resource. So that kind of is where everything starts, and that business development resource is all that they're doing is setting appointments. So we have, and I'll just kind of start off where we're at right now. So we have email campaigns, we have LinkedIn campaigns, we also have cold calling campaigns. So we're running three different styles of campaigning simultaneously. And so the purpose of that point is really about just getting a meeting. So, and that meeting is going to get set up for our account recruiting managers. Our account recruiting managers then qualify the meeting. So that's just kind of from how, like, the qualification of the actual meeting itself. Then when we actually move forward into a formalized search process, we have a sourcer.
Wait a sec. Wait, the step in the middle, that's the account recruiting manager who like does the client meeting,
Yeah.
uh, takes the brief, discusses client's hiring needs,
Yep. Yeah.
goes through the
Discusses.
36 questions.
Well, so that's actually where there's a breaking point right there, right?
Oh,
So
okay.
then from
Sorry. Go
there,
ahead.
their goal is then to get the agreement signed, right? So then from
Okay.
and
Mhm.
then once when the agreement is executed, terms are met, then we bring in a sourcer, the account recruiting manager that they've been working with, and then also a designated recruiter. So there's three people working on this process, and then from there we'll actually run through the search process of starting off having the recruiter and the account manager and the sourcer on that call to the hiring manager, in my opinion, is a game changer, because then from there there's a debrief internally after these calls with hiring managers, and you essentially have three minds saying, oh, I picked up this, I picked up this, I picked up this. And then during the process too, we'll also even bring the hiring manager into parts of our sourcing process. So from that point, the hiring manager now feels fully bought in to our company, right? To our initiatives. And they're seeing, oh my gosh, this is it, it more so takes the recruitment experience from like, I'm just gonna, as a recruitment agency, just send you candidates to curating an experience for the hiring manager to where they actually feel like it's a project that we're working on together,
I love that. That is so cool. What
right?
parts what parts of the apart from the intake call where you've got the hiring manager plus 3 people from your team, the sourcer, the recruiter, and the account manager are all in that call. What other parts do you involve the client in?
Um, as far as it's the sourcing, and that's about it. I mean, I think just the
But
sourcing, and
what do you
that's
mean
and
by involving them in the sourcing? I've not heard of that before.
yeah. So what we'll even do at times is we're very I have grown. So I'll kind of say this. When I was cycling, I became like a sourcing guru. I fell in love with building booleans. I fell in love with the technical piece of actually like finding a recruitment stack to actually like audit, not only automate certain parts of the process, but just finding this recruitment stack that was really around finding candidates that could not be found through traditional
Okay,
sources.
awesome.
So that's been a big thing for us, is bringing the hiring manager into saying, okay, like if you're really looking for these types of skill sets, whether it's a really technical job, showing the hiring manager saying, okay, like this is, if you want this skill set, this is how many less candidates in this geographic market you're going to have access to because of this skill set. So we're able to bring the hiring manager that granular into the sourcing process. Um, and it's educating the hiring manager into our world.
Okay, so you're literally telling them if you need this skill set, it reduces your talent pool from this number to this number. Is it
Right.
that sort of conversation or
And that's more in like very niche roles that we work
yeah.
on. Right?
Okay.
So it's
Fantastic.
not going
So
to be that simple for like a simple staff accountant or something like that. That's going to be a lot
yeah.
different. But for we see it more so in highly technical roles.
Okay. All right. Awesome. So you've got it sounds like you've got an effective, process, and so the roles you've got your dedicated business development person, you've got the account manager, you've got the sourcer, you've got the recruiter, um, and they're working as an effective unit, which it sounds amazing the way you're doing that. I know that you're passionate about managing Gen Z recruiters. Could you say a little, because you've got a very young team, could you say a little about why you've chosen to do that and how it works in your business?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think this, I'll kind of attribute it a lot to the conversations that we've talked about, just not only in Inner Circle Apex, but even when I first joined, of like the conversations of like why to hire, who to hire, how to hire, things like that. And I decided to go with a growth model of bringing kids in fresh out of college so we could teach them our process, teach them our procedure. Um, and I think that something that I learned like coming out of college is that I vividly remember just how vulnerable coming out of college was. At least for my experience, I think there's a lot of kids that come out of college and think they're on the top of the world, and they don't stop. But coming out of college for me was like really vulnerable, kind of entering the workforce. And I didn't quite realize as an individual contributor, like the potential value that I could bring, especially like when I was being yelled at, or if I always felt like at times like I'd be walking on like eggshells, making sure I'd be like perfect, and I think those are a lot of recruiting environments where it's like, if you don't deliver on your KPIs, then why are you here? Um, and I think a big thing that I focus on in managing Gen Zs is is just being able to say, hey, you know what? Like, if you need to take a day off today, take a day off. You know what? You didn't hit your KPIs, like take a day off. And what I've seen with that attitude of truly giving my employees like absolute free reign is they work 10 times harder, as if I would have said, you have to do this and I'm going to force you and bombard you. Like I think that obviously like we put a lot into like the kind of people we hire, so it's like if we see really quickly that this person's going to take advantage, obviously like you can see that pretty you can see that pretty clearly in the interview process. But I think like I have a big passion for managing like Gen Z's, just because like I really want to give them an experience that launches them into their professional careers. And I think at the end of the day, recruitment's a great career for a lot of people to work for 3 to 5 years or even 2 years and then go find what they really want to do. I mean, at the end of the day, like there isn't a lot of people that stay in recruitment long term. And I want to be able to, I just have a huge passion for creating a working environment for people that they feel very, very safe and very, very empowered in. And I
That's
see
awesome.
that yeah, I have even one employee that got a computer science degree, was working at a coffee shop because he felt like coding was ridiculous. And I think, I don't want to use his exact words, but, um, felt like it was just kind of way too much of a grind. And then he ended up interning with us for a couple months and then ended up quitting his coffee shop, joining full time, and then not even telling us that he was coming on full time until like 2 weeks before he started.
So
So
let me ask you about this then, because you seem to hiring, it can be a challenge, and identifying the people who are going to be successful. And you seem to have a ability to pick people who you wouldn't necessarily immediately, like a guy working as a barista. It's not an obvious background to choose. Like the Jesse had a more obvious background, right? He was grinding out 80 to 100 calls a day or whatever. You can see, oh, if he can do that, he can do this. Like this is going to seem easy for him in comparison. But then someone else who's like has a degree in computer science and then is working as a barista. What led you to think they were going to be successful at recruiting?
um I think that a lot of a lot of what I've seen and how I'm building my business right now is I don't look at people making me successful. I look at the company making people successful. So I don't really look at people, and this is just something that I've clearly seen just in working in a tertiary market, right? So in working in Boise, we don't necessarily have a talent pool of a Denver or a San Francisco where like you can find the perfect person. You really have to, like what I've seen hiring managers really be successful, specifically in Boise, are hiring managers that are able to adapt and truly have to ramp certain aspects up about a specific role, just because there's not enough of a talent pool, um, for certain positions, specifically in technology. So I saw that very clearly in recruiting. So I look at building my business as anyone can come in here in a certain role. They're going to have the training, they're going to have the tools to where all they need to do is breathe and put effort in, and they will be successful. And so I think that
So, just let me
like
pause here because I love the way you put that. So as long as they're breathing and, in other words, they're alive and they're
right,
willing to put in the effort, that's the criteria, because you're going to give them the platform, the tools, the training, process. They just follow your process, leverage the technology that you're giving them. But it's about the effort, I guess, is what you're
yeah.
saying, is are they willing to put in the effort? And that is, how do you determine that? Because and I know this is a stereotype and I don't necessarily buy into it, but you hear older, like people my age, complaining about younger folks who don't have the same work ethic that they had, blah, blah, blah. Um, you're obviously disproving that. How are you finding the folks who are willing to put in the effort?
So I think it's an issue is like not all Gen Zs want to be paid a ton of money. Like
Okay.
I think we're hiring managers, especially like salespeople, are absolutely missing the ball 100%. Is they think that money translates into solving all of the world's problems and solving all your emotional problems, solving everything. Where in all reality, like some Gen Z, some millennials, yeah, they're money driven, right? And recruitment's a great business for them. But other times it might be time off. It might be
Mm.
saying it might be, okay, you know what? If you hit your KPIs this week, we're taking Friday off. And in part, and I think part of it too is just having the vulnerability to say to your employees, like as a boss, be like, look, like I'll give a live example of what happened 2 week 2 weeks ago. So I said, okay, if everyone hits their KPIs this week, next week, we are going to take this Friday off coming into Labor Day because I just was very transparent. I was like, I don't want to work. I want to be able,
Okay.
right? I mean, and I think, and I really think that just having that transparency, like it really gets a buy-in, right? Of just saying, look, like we all need to hit our KPIs because I know you don't want to be in the office on a beautiful Friday afternoon, and neither do I. So we're gonna grind this out
Right.
together. So I honestly, I really try and take like a management approach of like being in the trenches with the team. Um,
But it sounds, Paul, like you've really tuned you're attuned to what actually motivates them and not only looking for a certain type. Like stereotypical recruiter is someone who's extremely money motivated and um you're saying, well, actually, I can work with a different profile person, and they can be really successful here. And but it's figuring out what motivates each individual, and then and empowering them and creating an environment where it's possible for them to have that and achieve that.
so I'll give another example, right? Like one, we needed to hire a business development rep because we had made a promotion from someone who was a previous business development rep into a new position. So we had to find someone new. So end up hiring this kid. He's not really a kid, but he ended up hiring someone. And I sat across from him and I'm like, what motivates you? And I could very clearly tell just based on the I don't want to say spidey senses in me, but just I could tell that money and time weren't really of high motivation to him. But I mean, obviously he's had like 4 years of being a business development rep, right? So I mean, this guy has definitely a successful tenure. Um, and I started to really talk to him, and I found out he really loves sports. I mean, this guy is the amount of sports this individual knows is shocking. Like it is absolutely shocking. Well, he's now so his trial plan, if he hits a certain number of meetings, like kept and all of these things kept, he's going to go watch he's going to go watch Russell Wilson play in Seattle for the opening game, right? So Russell Wilson used to play for Seattle, now he transferred into Denver. The opening NFL game is is that, like, that's the opening NFL game. I think it's a Monday night game on September 11th or something like that. And yeah, like I mean, I bought him a ticket and I said, hey, look, man, like if you want this, like, and we just have to find as business owners and business leaders, like one commission plan, one size does not fit all, right? And I think what I'm seeing with like Gen Zs is like you have to create a tailorized work experience for these people. And when you do that in the right way, they will feel bought in and they will absolutely work into the ground for you.
Okay, I love it. You're really getting to understand your team members, what is important to them, and then helping them get it.
Right. right? Because at the end of the day, right, as a managing director, like my clients is now my team. I have to do
Right, right.
whatever I can to understand them. I have to do whatever I can to motivate them to the exact way that they're going to feel successful.
I love it. Yeah.
That's kind of where we have to transition to if we're going to be successful in managing Gen Zs, in managing like this new up and coming generation. Because it's not, a lot of times it's not like, oh, let's set a contest where we can all go to some cool place for 1 week and you absolutely grind the rest of the year. It's like that who cares? A millennial's going to look, or a lot of Gen Z's look at that and be like, I don't, who cares about if you go to Mexico for a week if I'm living a really hard life the rest of the year. We have to find exact things that suit them and then absolutely maximize that kind of potential.
Love it. That's really cool. Um, you talk about you've mentioned empowerment a lot. What does that mean to you, and how are you empowering people to be successful?
So I think a lot of it too is like what I've seen is empowering. I think empowering people looks completely different for the type of person that you're dealing with, right? So like I think a lot for me is like I get empowered through verbal encouragement. Other people get empowered through, and I don't know if you've ever like read the book like Five Love Languages, but I think that it's very common to encourage people in like make sure people feel noticed in the workplace, right? So
Okay,
that's
wait
a
a sec. Let me just press pause on this for a second. So I've not read the book, but if I understand, if I am extrapolating correctly, it's a book about relationships, but
mhm.
you're just applying the same philosophy, the same strategy into business, like work relationships. Is that
Yes.
the idea?
Yes.
Okay,
Because
got it.
because because what I've seen is like people want to actually do something that matter.
Mm, yeah, totally. Have you ever Drive by Daniel Pink?
No, I haven't.
Put it on your list. I think you'd like it, Paul. But it's very much about that. It's that people are motivated by things like autonomy,
Mhm.
mastery, and meaning. Doing something that matters, like feeling like that what they're doing matters. And without having read the book, you're sort of applying that philosophy to your business. But sorry, I interrupted you. You
No.
were saying people want to do stuff that matters.
Yeah, and I think that I think in two ways of doing that. Like I think you have to notice. I think you have to. We as business leaders, we have to notice when people work hard. Like, I think that that's been. I mean, if you see too, right? Like that's a big complaint of. You hear a lot of hiring managers say like they just want to be coddled, but really, like you're dealing with a fatherless generation that was never noticed because their parents were at work all day, right? So we as business leaders, I hate to say it, we have to kind of pick up the slack to be like, okay, like I'm gonna notice you. And you know what? Like I've had employees like say to me, like open up really in-depth things to me. And it's like, okay, cool. Like we're gonna deal with this. Like you've let me know. And it's like, I'm not your therapist, I'm not your counselor, but I am gonna create a work environment for you that like I'm going to let you know every day that I'm proud of you. I'm going to let you know as a boss that like every day you're coming in here that like your efforts do matter. Your efforts do count, right? And like I think that it's like we have to kind of harness that because that's what's going to harness people to be like I will make 120 calls for you and I will do it happily, right? Like that's how like we have to motivate I believe at like a really deep level and when we tap into that motivation of the person, that's where we're going to see insane that I've seen. I'll say that I've seen insane results.
Well, there's no question the results you're getting are disproportionate to the size of team. Like the just the level of business you guys are winning and the revenue you guys are generating for a pretty small team. And are you guys still working out of your house, or like what's the setup?
Yeah, so we have a full, like, our company is fully built remotely. So
Yeah.
we fully, like, I really did not think I'd have to get an office and stuff like that, and I'm kind of kicking and screaming. But yeah, so we work kind of hybrid. So
Yeah.
we have one fully remote employee, and then the rest is all of us just here in Boise, and we kind of work out of our basement, which is awesome. But it's unfortunately like we're coming to the point to where we have to get an office, and I'm kind of kicking and screaming to do it because I don't know. I just want to be able to go and, like, yeah, I don't know why, but we're getting ready to we're in the process right now of looking for office space, and where I'm like, I really want to be super downtown, but then everyone else is like, no, I want to be by the surf wave. And I'm like, well, the surf wave is cool. So we're kind of in that process of kind of figuring out where we wanna land.
I think you could do you definitely need to find an office that is going to sustain the culture that you've created. I can't see you just going into a box in a like office block like with
Sure.
100 other companies. You definitely need to do something that's a little bit quirky, a little bit different that where people still feel because you're right now, people are coming into your home, right? And they're just you've got desks everywhere and people are just like that is a such a cool vibe. I understand why, like you're at the point now where you can't keep growing if there's only so many desks you can fit into your basement. But um, like I'm just as an example, I went and worked with a client over in Barcelona, and they had such a cool office. It basically was like uh I don't know if this was this is all offices in Barcelona, but it was like a block of flats. Like it was a
Hmm.
tenement building, okay, on this really old street. You walk up the stairs to there is basically like a whole flat, like a whole apartment. Um, really high, like it was an old building, so like really high ceilings, um, big rooms, and then it opened up. They had these sliding doors that went out onto this balcony, which was massive. It was like this huge that overlooked the city, and they had out there like deck furniture with awnings. They had like a barbecue. They had like uh, table tennis, and but like this it was just a really cool office. And uh, like obviously that was Barcelona was half like I'm not that's hard to replicate, but I'm sure you could find something that is just different to a standard boring recruiting office, um, that where people still have that same relaxed vibe that you've created by working out of your house. Sorry if that was a complete tangent,
No, no,
Paul,
that's
but
good.
uh,
That's kind of what because we're like trying to figure something out that's gonna be a fit for our culture. And like,
yeah,
I don't know, I've kind of like been in this place where it's like I just want to feel cool being downtown, but I'm also at the same time like our culture is not gonna fit in a box, which
yeah,
is,
no, definitely.
but yeah, no,
Maybe you
that's
and
good.
you and Nicole just need to buy a bigger house so you can fit more people in it.
Totally, totally. I think that'd be. I think we my our yeah. I think people would love that. We'll see. But
Awesome. All right. Well, look, you've gotten to 7 people. What's the vision?
yeah, so it's ever changing, right? I think
Okay.
that it's like I'm kind of in this place where, yeah, we'd love to grow to 30, 40, 50 million in revenue, multiple offices, but then also I've really been challenged by building out the infrastructure first. So, like a big deficit that I found out in our organization was training. So we've
Mhm.
built out this 6 week training process. It's really really exciting what we're rolling out to the team. So right now I'm kind of in this interesting spot where like there's like the pro athlete in me that's like grow to $100 million and then sell and then retire on a beach. I mean, you know what I mean. But then it's like also too, like in really doing like the research, I've like it's been really vulnerable because half of companies that go bankrupt, it's always within 1 to 2 years after their record sales, right? So
Huh.
I've kind of learned, like, okay, so it's like I'm in this place right now where it's like, okay, it's scaling, but it's at what cost, right? Like what, like, because you there's a lot of things that go into place that when you scale, and I'm even seeing it right now of growing from 3 to 7, and we have our eighth person starting in October 1st.
Oh,
um
congrats.
like I'm I'm in this place right now of kind of almost kind of reassessing and reevaluating. We have
Hmm.
this beautiful delivery infrastructure, we have a beautiful sales infrastructure, but what I'm starting to see right now is like, okay, we, to train, it's a whole nother add-on, creating a culture of coaching, creating a culture of
Yeah,
continuously learning, which is huge if in growing from 3 million to 10 million, right? Like there's so many
absolutely.
things that like I'm in the process right now of putting in. So, growing to where we've grown right now, I've kind of, I'm not as much involved on a desk, which is
Hmm.
which there's good pieces to it, there's bad pieces to it, but now I'm realizing it's like, okay, I got to invest in, like, I have four core people that I'm like pouring everything into, and so I'm in this place right now of like really reevaluating my vision, because I'm seeing
Hmm.
fruits of of the true differences of like growing an organization, right? And I think there's
Hmm.
beauty to it, like it's really fun, but I'm kind of in this place right now where I'm like, I'm like really reevaluating, like growing for growth's sake, like
Absolutely.
I'm really in that place just in this moment right now, because like I'm realizing it's like, wow, I totally am not riding my bike as much. I'm not running as much. I'm working from dawn to dusk. And it's like, hey, that's great,
Mm.
but at the same time, I'm really evaluating in the price of like, okay, in scaling a massive organization, what is the true cost to that? So I
Mm.
wish in previous times I would have been like, Mark, I'm gonna grow to like 100 million one day, and it's gonna be insane. But I'm at this place right now where it's like, you know, I'm honestly realizing that like slow growth might. I'm just been entertaining ideas of like what's slow growth versus rapid growth, and so yeah, I wish I could kind of give a clearer answer, but yeah, so we'll kind of see.
I
I
get it.
think
Yeah,
eventually
I
I
get it.
see we've hit targets, obviously set targets to hit 3 million, um next year, and then I mean really my targets are, 3 million and then 10 million, and then kind of right at 10 million is kind of when I'm gonna look my head around and kind of say, like, resurvey the land. So I've kind of given myself like two areas, two revenue targets to resurvey. Um, but yeah, I hope that can kind of answer.
Yeah, no, totally. It sounds, I mean, look, it's hard to see further than 3 years ahead anyway. So you've got your next couple of milestones mapped out, which is
Mhm.
awesome. And yeah, this journey that you're on, you're just learning so much, and it's exciting to see what you're doing, Paul, and it's a privilege to be part of your journey because yeah, it's just really exciting seeing you, Nicole, implement these things like the training that you just mentioned. Like that's the latest thing that you're really investing a lot of energy on, which I think is going to definitely pay dividends. Um, and I'm glad you came on the podcast. I love your energy. You're a fun guy, and
Thanks, man.
I can see why you've you've created this environment and this team which people are just outperforming against expectation, and I
Mhm.
think a lot of that has to do with your leadership and the way that you run things. So kudos to you, man. You're
Hey,
doing a phenomenal job, and thanks for coming on the show and sharing it.
hey, absolutely. Thanks for having me, and I'm super thankful that I got to come on, because it was really funny. Even before I contacted you, I'd be listening to, I think I listened to like Jordan Rayboy, or I listened to some like people on your podcast. I was like, this is insane. Like they can build this, and it's just really cool to be on the show now. I feel it's a huge honor. So thank you so much.
Oh, brilliant. Absolutely, my pleasure. So thanks again, and yeah, I'll see you guys next week.
Cool. See you, buddy. Thank you.
Take care.